The greatest weapon in trading is peace, yet it's the one element most traders fail to recognize as a strategic advantage. Peace sounds soft, almost passive, but in the market it is as sharp as a blade. It cuts through noise, fear, confusion, and the endless stream of impulses that push traders into decisions they later regret. Peace is not simply the absence of chaos, it is the presence of clarity. And clarity is where your true edge is born. When you reach a state where you no longer feel threatened by market movement, where every tick does not challenge your identity or self-worth, trading becomes a structured game of probabilities instead of a battlefield of emotions. Most traders believe their biggest obstacle is lack of information, poor indicators, or inconsistent setups. They obsess over strategies, tweak entry signals, refine exits, and add more layers of complexity to their charts, hoping to drown out uncertainty. But uncertainty is a natural law of the market. The market was never designed to give you comfort. It was designed to expose your deepest emotional imbalances. Without peace, every fluctuation feels personal. A losing trade feels like punishment. A winning trade feels like validation. And when your sense of self is tied to the outcome of each trade, you are no longer interacting with the market. You are reacting to your fears. Peace changes the entire internal experience. It gives you the psychological space to accept randomness without emotional friction. It allows you to focus on the only thing that truly matters, executing your edge over a series of trades. Without peace, your mind is constantly negotiating with itself, hesitating, doubting, chasing, avoiding, hoping, fearing. With peace, you make decisions rooted in certainty, not because the outcome is guaranteed, but because you are no longer threatened by uncertainty. You no longer need the market to behave a certain way to feel okay. You no longer require immediate confirmation to trust your plan. Peace lets you detach from the outcome long enough to let your edge work. This peace does not come from winning. It does not come from a perfect strategy. It comes from a shift in your internal relationship with risk. When you accept risk completely, nothing the market does can emotionally destabilize you. And when nothing destabilizes you, the market becomes predictable, not in outcome, but in structure. You stop fighting it. You start flowing with it. You stop trying to control it. You start controlling yourself. This is when trading becomes effortless, not because it is easy, but because you stop creating internal resistance. The greatest weapon in trading is peace, because peace allows you to see the market as it is, not as your fears distort it to be. It lets you act instead of react, observe instead of panic, and follow your plan without the weight of emotional conflict. Peace transforms the trader before it ever transforms the results. Peace removes emotional distortion in decision-making. And this single principle transforms the entire trading experience when fully understood and practiced. Most traders enter the market with the intention of being rational, disciplined, and objective, yet the moment prices move against them, their internal stability collapses. The reason is simple: they never learned how to create a peaceful internal environment. They approach trading with tension, fear, expectation, and mental noise. They try to force clarity through analysis instead of allowing clarity to arise from calmness. When the mind is unsettled, every piece of market information becomes exaggerated, threatening, or misleading. But when peace is present, the same information becomes neutral, manageable, and interpretable. Peace is not just an emotion, it is a psychological framework through which you process market data. Without it, you are not truly trading, you are emotionally reacting. Emotional distortion occurs because the mind interprets market movement through the lens of personal meaning. A losing candle suddenly becomes a threat to your identity. A sudden spike becomes a source of hope. A reversal becomes a validation or an insult. None of this has anything to do with the market itself. The market is simply moving. But when peace is missing, the meaning you attach to that movement becomes heavy and overwhelming. You begin to interpret randomness as personal punishment or reward. This is the gateway to impulsive decisions, hesitation at entries, premature exits, revenge trading, and the endless need to constantly monitor the chart as if watching it will somehow control the outcome. When peace is present, these distortions dissolve because your value is no longer tied to each outcome. A losing trade does not feel like failure, it feels like a natural part of the process. Peace gives your mind the necessary space to separate probability from emotion. When you approach the market in a calm state, you process information the way a surgeon handles a tool: precise, steady, focused. There is no panic threatening your decisions, no internal chatter trying to push you into action, no fear of missing out forcing you to chase. Peace acts as a filter, removing the emotional static that contaminates your perception. Instead of seeing candles through the lens of fear or greed, you see structure, context, and flow. Peace gives you the ability to respond instead of react. A response is intentional, aligned with your plan. A reaction is emotional, driven by fear or impulse. Peace ensures that responses dominate your trading behavior. When peace becomes your internal baseline, you begin to take trades without hesitation. Hesitation is a symptom of emotional conflict. One part of your mind wants to follow the plan, while another part fears the outcome. This internal war creates physical tension, mental fog, and impulsive decision-making. But peace eliminates this conflict. It aligns your internal state with your external execution. You can act decisively because you feel no threat, and when you feel no threat, the mind works efficiently. You see the setup, you recognize your edge, you take the trade, and you let the outcome unfold without trying to force control over something that is inherently uncertain. Emotional distortion also affects how traders interpret losses and wins. Without peace, a loss feels like a personal attack or a reflection of incompetence. This triggers a spiral of defensive behaviors, scaling up recklessly to make it back, abandoning the plan, or avoiding trades entirely. Peace removes this weight. A loss becomes a simple result of probability, nothing more. It carries no emotional charge. When you can look at a loss without experiencing internal disruption, you gain the ability to evaluate your edge clearly. You can identify whether the loss was a natural part of the system or caused by a mistake. This clarity is impossible when your emotional state is unstable. Peace is the foundation that allows analysis to remain objective rather than reactive. Peace also transforms how you perceive winning trades. Many traders assume winning feels good, but emotional distortion can turn wins into traps. A win can inflate ego, create overconfidence, and weaken discipline. Without peace, a winning trade feels like proof of personal superiority or a sign that the next trade will automatically be profitable. This is how traders slip into greed and break rules. But with peace, a win is just data. It does not elevate your emotional state or distort your perception. Peace keeps you grounded, neutral, balanced. It prevents the emotional highs that lead to reckless behavior. When wins and losses both feel neutral, your decisions become consistent because your emotional equilibrium is never disturbed. Another powerful effect of peace is its ability to neutralize the illusion of urgency. Emotional distortion creates a constant feeling that you must act quickly or you will miss something. This urgency leads to impulsive entries, late exits, and a tense obsession with catching every move. Peace dissolves the illusion by reminding your subconscious that the market is infinite. Opportunities are infinite, and your edge plays out over time, not in a single trade. When urgency disappears, patience emerges naturally. You wait for ideal conditions without feeling pressured. You skip bad trades without feeling fear. You let setups come to you instead of chasing the market out of emotional restlessness. Peace also sharpens perception. An anxious mind sees the market through a narrow lens, constantly scanning for threats or validation. A peaceful mind sees the full picture, trend, structure, volatility, patterns, context. You begin to recognize subtle shifts that were previously hidden behind emotional noise. Your intuition strengthens because it is no longer clouded by fear. Intuition in trading is not mystical. It is simply the subconscious recognizing familiar patterns without interference. Peace allows this natural intelligence to surface. When peace removes emotional distortion, discipline becomes effortless. Discipline does not require force or willpower when your emotional environment is calm. You follow rules because nothing inside you is fighting against them. Your mind is aligned with your plan. This alignment turns trading into a structured, controlled process instead of an emotional roller coaster. Peace is not a luxury. It is the core requirement for consistently objective decision-making. Only when emotional distortion is removed can you truly see, think, act, and execute like a professional trader. Acceptance of risk creates internal stability, and without this acceptance, everything in trading becomes a psychological struggle. Most traders believe they have accepted risk simply because they acknowledge the possibility of losing. But acknowledging risk intellectually is not the same as accepting it emotionally. True acceptance means there is no internal resistance when uncertainty unfolds. It means the possibility of losing does not activate fear, tension, or defensive behavior. It means you no longer negotiate with the market in your mind, hoping it will spare you from discomfort. Acceptance of risk is the psychological foundation that allows every decision to be executed without hesitation and without emotional conflict. Until a trader reaches this level of acceptance, the mind will continue to resist the very nature of the market, creating instability, doubt, and inconsistency. Internal stability is impossible when you subconsciously reject the reality of risk. Every time the market moves against you, your emotions amplify because part of you still believes that adverse movement should not be happening. You feel threatened not by the trade, but by the meaning you attach to the trade. If the risk feels unacceptable, even a small fluctuation can trigger internal chaos. Your mind begins to formulate irrational thoughts. Why is this happening now? This shouldn't have reversed. Maybe I should exit before it gets worse. These reactions are not responses to the chart. They are responses to your internal resistance to risk. When risk is fully accepted, these thoughts do not arise. You understand that every outcome is possible, that any trade can lose, and that market movement is not personal. You stop trying to control uncertainty. You allow it to exist without emotional friction. Acceptance of risk also means accepting the idea that you can do everything right and still lose. This is one of the hardest psychological barriers for traders to cross. The human mind is conditioned to connect effort with predictable reward. But markets do not operate on effort-based outcomes. They operate on probability. When you fully accept this, you stop expecting the market to reward you for good behavior. You start focusing on the process instead of the reward. This shift creates internal stability because your emotions no longer rise and fall based on individual trade outcomes. You become comfortable with randomness. You allow losses to occur without interpreting them as mistakes or personal failures. You stop trying to avoid losing and instead concentrate on executing your edge repeatedly. Internal stability emerges when there is no longer a battle between what you know and what you feel. Many traders intellectually understand that losses are part of the game, but emotionally they fear them. This divide creates tension, hesitation, impulsive exits, and second guessing. Acceptance of risk bridges this gap. When you accept risk, the emotional charge disappears. You no longer flinch when the trade dips. You no longer panic when a candle forms against you. You no longer feel the need to interfere with your plan. This stability allows you to act with calmness even in volatile environments. It brings you into alignment with the true nature of trading, where uncertainty is constant and losses are inevitable components of long-term success. Acceptance of risk also transforms how you size positions. Many traders take positions that are too large because they subconsciously believe the trade must win. This creates unbearable psychological pressure. Every tick becomes emotionally heavy. Even minor pullbacks feel catastrophic. But when you fully accept risk, you naturally choose position sizes that align with emotional comfort and mathematical consistency. You stop sizing based on greed or fear. You size based on logic. This reduces emotional strain and enhances stability. A manageable position size allows you to think clearly, follow your plan, and avoid impulsive decisions. When risk feels acceptable, you no longer need to hope for the market to move in your favor. You trust your edge to unfold over time. Another powerful aspect of accepting risk is the dissolution of attachment. Attachment to outcomes is one of the main sources of emotional instability. When you are attached to the idea of a trade winning, you distort your perception. You start seeing what you want to see, not what the market is showing. You ignore signals, violate rules, and cling to losing positions because the outcome feels tied to your sense of security. Acceptance removes attachment. You understand that the outcome of each trade is irrelevant compared to the outcome of the next 100 trades. You detach from single results, allowing your mind to remain neutral. This neutrality stabilizes your emotional state and prevents destructive behaviors like revenge trading or doubling down on losing positions. When risk is accepted, your relationship with uncertainty evolves. Most traders fear uncertainty because they interpret it as danger, but uncertainty simply means possibility. When you embrace this, uncertainty becomes energizing instead of threatening. Internal stability grows because your mind is no longer fighting what it cannot control. You stop trying to predict every move. You stop seeking impossible certainty. Instead, you operate within the framework of probabilities. This mindset shift frees your cognitive resources from fear-driven patterns. You think more clearly, react more intelligently, and perceive market movement without emotional bias. Acceptance of risk also strengthens patience. When you fear losing, You trade too frequently or at the wrong moments because you are desperate to avoid missing an opportunity. But when you accept that risk is inherent and unavoidable, you stop chasing trades. You allow the market to come to you. You wait for clear setups because you no longer feel internal pressure to control the timing of outcomes. This patience increases stability because you are no longer acting impulsively. Every action becomes deliberate, measured, and aligned with your plan. Internal stability is further reinforced by the understanding that risk does not threaten your identity. Many traders collapse emotionally because they equate losing with being wrong and being wrong with being inadequate. This internal narrative creates tremendous pressure. But when you accept risk, you break the link between identity and outcome. You stop defining yourself by the result of a single trade. You define yourself by your ability to execute consistently. This eliminates ego-driven errors and frees you from the emotional burden of proving something to yourself or others. When acceptance becomes complete, fear loses its ability to influence your decisions. Fear thrives in environments where risk feels unacceptable. But when you embrace risk, fear has no leverage. You become internally anchored, mentally calm, and emotionally steady. You enter trades without anxiety. You exit trades without regret. You allow outcomes to unfold naturally, knowing you have already accepted every possible result before you place the trade. A calm mind executes the edge consistently, and this single psychological state determines whether a trader becomes stable, disciplined, and profitable over the long run. Most traders believe their success depends on strategy, indicators, or timing, but the true determinant of consistency is the mental environment from which decisions arise. A calm mind is not simply quiet. It is free from internal conflict, free from emotional noise, and free from the psychological tension that distorts perception. When the mind is calm, the edge expresses itself naturally because there is no emotional interference. When the mind is chaotic, even the strongest edge becomes unreliable because execution becomes inconsistent. The market does not reward who knows the most. It rewards who can act with clarity repeatedly without deviation. A calm mind is stable because it is not threatened by market movement. When traders feel threatened, even intellectually simple actions become difficult to execute. The threat does not come from the market itself, but from the internal meaning the trader attaches to it. If a trader feels anxious about losing, every candle becomes a potential danger. If a trader feels the need to be right, every reversal becomes a psychological attack. These internal pressures make consistent execution impossible. But when the mind is calm, threat perception disappears. A candle is just a candle. A loss is just a loss. A fluctuation is simply part of the structure. Nothing becomes personal. This neutrality allows the trader to follow the plan without hesitation or emotional resistance. Consistency requires alignment between intention and action, and a calm mind maintains that alignment. When the mind is agitated, the trader knows what to do but cannot do it. They hesitate on entries, exit too early out of fear, move their stop impulsively, or avoid taking trades after seeing a loss. Emotional turbulence breaks the connection between the plan and the execution. But when the mind is calm, intention and action merge. You see the setup, recognize your edge, and execute without hesitation. There is no internal debate, no back and forth arguing, no mental resistance. The decision flows naturally because the mind is not in conflict with itself. A calm mind also perceives market information more accurately. Emotional turbulence distorts perception. Fear makes the market look threatening. Greed makes it look full of opportunity. Hope blinds the trader to danger. Frustration leads to overtrading. A calm mind views the chart without projection or distortion. It sees structure, context, and probabilities clearly. This clarity allows the trader to identify high-quality setups while ignoring noise. It reduces the need to force trades. It eliminates the illusion that every movement must be captured. Instead of reacting to every tick, the trader observes patiently and acts only when the edge is present. The calm mind is deeply connected to the ability to trust one's edge. Most traders intellectually understand their edge, but do not emotionally trust it. This lack of trust manifests as interference, cutting trades early, avoiding entries, or taking impulsive trades outside the plan. A calm mind does not require emotional reassurance from the market. It trusts the statistical nature of trading. It understands that any single trade means nothing. This acceptance allows the trader to let the edge unfold over a large sample size. Consistency is built on this trust. Because without trust, discipline collapses. A calm mind also supports detachment. Detachment is not indifference, it is freedom from emotional dependency on outcomes. When a trader is attached to results, the mind becomes unstable. Wins create euphoria, losses create panic, and the trader enters a cycle of emotional highs and lows. A calm mind is not affected by these fluctuations. It does not seek validation in wins or feel threatened by losses. It remains centered and neutral, regardless of the outcome. This neutrality preserves consistency because emotional swings no longer influence trading decisions. Discipline becomes effortless when the mind is calm. Discipline is not about force. It is about the absence of internal conflict. When the mind is turbulent, discipline feels like a battle. You constantly fight impulses, doubt, and urges. But when the mind is calm, there is nothing to fight. The impulse to break rules never arises with intensity. The urge to chase trades weakens. The need to compensate for losses disappears. You follow the plan because your emotional environment supports it. The calm mind makes discipline the natural state instead of a forced effort. A calm mind also enhances patience. Patience is not a skill, it is a psychological consequence of internal quiet. When the mind is restless, waiting feels painful. You feel pressured to act, you fear missing out, you seek constant stimulation from the market. But when the mind is calm, waiting feels natural. You have no urge to force outcomes. You sit with neutrality, allowing setups to form at their own pace. This patience prevents emotional trading and preserves capital. Patience becomes a natural extension of calmness, not a conscious struggle. Another powerful advantage of a calm mind is its ability to recover instantly from adverse events. Losses do not create emotional shock. Drawdowns do not trigger panic. Mistakes do not spiral into self-doubt. The mind remains stable and unaffected, allowing the trader to return to the next trade without emotional residue. Most inconsistency in trading comes from emotional carryover. One bad trade infects the next. A calm mind prevents this because it does not internalize outcomes. It experiences events without becoming attached to them, allowing the trader to return to equilibrium effortlessly. The calm mind also eliminates the illusion of control. Traders who fear uncertainty attempt to force outcomes, holding losers, closing winners too early, entering prematurely, or meddling with stops. A calm mind accepts uncertainty fully. It does not try to control what cannot be controlled. Instead, it focuses on the only controllable elements: execution, risk, and behavior. This acceptance reduces anxiety and sharpens decision-making. When the mind is not busy resisting reality, it becomes fully available to engage with the present moment. Consistency ultimately depends on this internal state. No strategy, indicator, or system can compensate for a chaotic mind. A trader executes poorly not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack internal balance. A calm mind removes emotional noise, eliminates internal conflict, and creates a stable psychological platform from which consistent execution becomes not only possible but natural. Continuous clarity, patience, trust, neutrality, and disciplined action all arise from the same source. A calm, undisturbed mental state that allows the trader's edge to function exactly as it was designed to. Detachment from outcomes improves clarity, and this single shift can completely transform the way a trader interprets and interacts with the market. Most traders enter the market with emotional expectations attached to every trade. They need a trade to win. They hope it goes their way. They fear that a loss will hurt them, and they silently negotiate with the market to give them what they want. This attachment creates a mental environment filled with tension, pressure, and emotional noise. As long as outcomes matter emotionally, the mind cannot see the market clearly. Every candle becomes loaded with meaning. Every fluctuation becomes a threat or a promise. Detachment removes this emotional weight and liberates the trader's perception. When outcomes no longer define emotional states, clarity emerges naturally. Clarity is not simply the ability to read charts, it is the ability to interpret market information without distortions created by fear, hope, greed, or avoidance. Attachment creates filters. A trader who is attached to a winning outcome sees the chart through the lens of desire. They look for confirmation that isn't really there. They ignore signals that contradict their hopes. They hold trades too long because they cannot emotionally accept a loss. Detachment removes these filters. When you no longer need the trade to win, you can finally see what the market is actually doing. You see structure instead of desire. You see risk instead of fantasy. You see probability instead of certainty. Detachment allows you to observe instead of projecting your emotional needs onto the chart. When outcomes do not determine your emotional state, mistakes become easier to identify. Attachment creates defensiveness. When you are emotionally tied to the result, admitting a mistake feels painful because it challenges your sense of competence. You justify decisions, overlook errors, and blame the market. Detachment eliminates the ego pressure. The outcome is just data. A mistake is simply information. There is no emotional punishment associated with acknowledging it. This clarity results in rapid psychological growth because you can correct errors without internal resistance. Traders who are attached to outcomes repeat the same mistakes endlessly. Traders who are detached learn quickly because they can face reality without emotional distortion. Detachment also brings freedom from fear. Fear is a direct consequence of emotional attachment. If you need a certain outcome, you fear losing it. If you fear losing it, your mind becomes tense and defensive. Fear makes you see danger where there is none, creates hesitation, and pushes you into premature exits. When you detach from outcomes, fear loses its grip. A losing trade is simply a statistical event, not a personal threat. This absence of fear sharpens your perception. You can evaluate setups objectively. You can stay in trades without panicking. You can follow your plan without interference from emotional doubt. Clarity arises because your mind is no longer occupied with protecting your emotional comfort. Greed also dissolves when detachment is present. Greed is just another form of attachment, the desire for more, driven by the belief that the outcome will satisfy something inside you. Greed clouds judgment, pushes traders into over-leveraging, late entries, and impulsive decisions. It blinds them to risk. When you detach, greed loses its emotional pull because your internal state is no longer dependent on external results. You seek accuracy, not emotional gratification. This shift refines your ability to stay disciplined and patient. You begin to choose quality over quantity. You stop chasing and start selecting. Clarity improves dramatically because the mind is no longer hijacked by the craving for quick rewards. Detachment enhances decision-making by eliminating internal conflict. Most trading hesitation comes from emotional attachment to outcomes. The trader wants to follow the plan, but fears the result. They see the setup, but feel anxious about what might happen. They want to enter, but hesitate because they cannot tolerate loss. This internal conflict delays action and creates inconsistency. Detachment removes the emotional stakes. Without attachment, there is no internal battle. The mind becomes synchronized with the plan. Decisions become smooth, immediate, and clean. You act because it is time to act, without emotional negotiations slowing you down. This fluidity improves execution and increases the reliability of your edge. Detachment also improves clarity by expanding your time frame of focus. Attachment compresses your attention to the immediate outcome of each trade. Every single result feels critical. Every loss feels devastating. Every win feels necessary. This narrow focus distorts your understanding of probability. You see the market through the lens of short-term survival instead of long-term consistency. Detachment frees you from this urgency. You begin to see your trading in terms of sequences, patterns, and large sample sizes. You recognize that one trade means nothing on its own. This shift prevents emotional overreactions to single outcomes and keeps your mind anchored in statistical reality. Clarity improves because each individual trade loses its emotional power. A detached trader can also remain present, and presence is essential for clarity. Attachment pulls the mind into the future, into imagined outcomes, hopes, fears, and consequences. The mind drifts away from what is actually happening on the chart. This creates a gap between reality and perception. But when the mind is detached, it stays grounded in the moment. You observe the market exactly as it is without projecting your emotional expectations into the future. This presence sharpens your awareness. It allows you to detect subtle shifts in momentum, structure, or volatility that emotionally reactive traders overlook. You become more attuned to the actual behavior of the market. Detachment strengthens resilience. Traders who are attached to outcomes break under pressure because every loss feels personal. They lose confidence quickly, question their methods, and spiral into emotional decision-making. Traders who are detached remain stable. They understand that outcomes fluctuate, but their internal state does not need to fluctuate with them. This stability enhances clarity because clarity cannot exist in a shaken, unstable mind. When your internal world remains calm and balanced, you can evaluate situations without emotional bias. You can bounce back from losses immediately without mental residue clouding your judgment. Another powerful effect of detachment is the dissolution of mental narratives. Attachment creates stories in the mind, stories about what should happen, what must happen, what you need to happen. These narratives pull you away from objective observation. They blind you to invalid setups, encourage you to justify weak trades, and stop you from recognizing when the market environment has changed. Detachment dissolves narratives. You see what is in front of you, not what your mind wants to be there. This direct perception heightens clarity to a professional level. Detachment ultimately trains the mind to value process over outcome. When process becomes the priority, clarity becomes natural. You stop looking for emotional comfort and start looking for accuracy. You stop reacting to results and start responding to your plan. You stop needing the market to behave a certain way and start aligning yourself with the way the market actually behaves. This shift removes emotional fog, eliminates distortion, and allows your edge to express itself through consistent, clear execution. Emotional neutrality is the foundation of disciplined trading because it creates the internal environment required for clear thinking, consistent action, and stable perception. Most traders imagine discipline as a forceful act of willpower, something they must constantly push themselves to maintain. They try to force discipline against their emotions rather than cultivating the emotional neutrality that makes discipline effortless. When emotions dominate, discipline becomes a battle. When emotions quiet down, discipline becomes natural. Neutrality is not emotional numbness, it is emotional balance. It is the state where reactions do not overpower reason, where impulses do not override structure, and where internal noise does not distort what the market is showing. Without neutrality, even the best strategies become unreliable because emotions disrupt execution at the exact moments consistency is required. Emotional neutrality allows the trader to see the market without personal bias. When emotions are active, fear, greed, frustration, excitement, the mind projects these emotions onto the chart. A neutral candle becomes threatening under fear. A reversal becomes an opportunity under greed. A small drawdown becomes catastrophic under insecurity. A slight win becomes validation under ego. Emotions filter perception, and perception shapes decisions. Neutrality removes these filters. It allows the trader to observe the market exactly as it is, rather than through the lens of emotional expectations. This clarity is essential because the market does not reward emotional behavior. It rewards objective interpretation and consistent action. Neutrality stabilizes decision-making. When a trader is emotionally charged, decisions become reactive rather than intentional. The trader jumps in too early, exits too soon, moves stops impulsively, hesitates on entries, or flips biases based on temporary emotional discomfort. These reactions come from a mind trying to avoid pain or chase pleasure. Emotional neutrality removes the emotional stakes from decisions. When nothing in the outcome threatens your internal state, decisions are made for the right reasons, because your edge is present, because your plan dictates it, because your structure tells you it's time. Neutrality transforms decisions from emotional negotiations into precise actions rooted in logic. Discipline depends on the ability to follow a predefined plan consistently, and neutrality supports that consistency. Emotional highs or lows disrupt discipline because they create internal conflicts. When excited, a trader becomes reckless. When fearful, a trader becomes hesitant. When frustrated, a trader seeks revenge. When overconfident, a trader takes unnecessary risks. Neutrality levels these extremes. It prevents spikes of euphoria after wins and dips of despair after losses. It keeps the mind centered, balanced, and aligned with the plan. A neutral trader does not need to force discipline. Discipline emerges naturally from the absence of emotional interference. Neutrality also reduces cognitive load. Emotions consume mental energy. Fear occupies attention. Greed demands focus. Anxiety creates tension. Frustration narrows perception. When the mind is neutral, cognitive resources are fully available to analyze, observe, and act. This enhances clarity, reaction speed, and pattern recognition. A neutral mind processes information cleanly because it is not busy managing emotional reactions. The trader becomes mentally efficient, able to focus entirely on structure, probability, and movement instead of internal chatter. This efficiency strengthens discipline because a mind not overloaded with emotion is far more capable of executing a plan consistently. Emotional neutrality strengthens resilience. Trading guarantees losses, drawdowns, and periods of uncertainty. A trader lacking neutrality takes each loss personally. They internalize outcomes as reflections of competence or identity. This emotional vulnerability destroys confidence and leads to impulsive decisions aimed at emotional relief rather than strategic accuracy. A neutral trader experiences losses as neutral events, data points rather than emotional wounds. Because outcomes have no emotional power, nothing destabilizes their internal state. This resilience allows them to continue following their plan regardless of temporary adversity. Consistency becomes possible because their emotional equilibrium is not disrupted by the natural fluctuations of the market. Neutrality improves patience, which is one of the essential components of discipline. Impatient traders force trades, enter early, refuse to wait for confirmation, and abandon their rules because they feel pressure to be active. This pressure comes from emotional agitation, fear of missing out, boredom, excitement, or desperation. A neutral trader does not experience this urgency. They feel no emotional need to participate in every move. They wait naturally for clean setups because their internal world is quiet. Patience becomes effortless because neutrality eliminates the emotional impulses that push traders into premature or impulsive action. A neutral emotional state also allows the trader to adapt. Markets change, volatility shifts, trends break, ranges form, conditions evolve. A trader dominated by emotion clings to previous expectations, refusing to adapt because their emotional attachment locks them into a rigid view. They seek comfort in familiarity rather than accuracy. A neutral trader has no emotional investment in any particular outcome or expectation. This flexibility allows them to adapt quickly when conditions shift. Their clarity remains intact because their judgment is not clouded by emotional attachment to past trades, past beliefs, or past results. Adaptability is a form of discipline, and neutrality supports it by removing emotional resistance to change. Neutrality protects the trader from the influence of ego. Ego-driven trading destroys discipline because it turns trading into a personal battle with the market. When ego is active, traders avoid placing stops, refuse to accept losses, double down to prove themselves right, and take oversized positions to inflate their sense of superiority. Ego seeks emotional gratification, not strategic correctness. A neutral trader is not trying to prove anything. They are not seeking validation or recognition. Their focus is on execution, not emotion. Without ego, discipline becomes natural because there is no internal force trying to override the plan for emotional satisfaction. Emotional neutrality also allows a trader to handle wins without distortion. Wins often cause more damage to discipline than losses because they inflate confidence and create a sense of invincibility. A trader who becomes emotionally elevated after a win begins to violate rules, take larger risks, and abandon patience. Neutrality prevents this psychological inflation. Wins are processed the same way losses are. Neutral events, part of a larger sequence, statistically insignificant on their own. This balanced response preserves discipline because the trader does not allow success to destabilize their behavior. Neutrality enhances long-term consistency by shifting focus away from individual outcomes. When traders care emotionally about each trade, they become reactive, inconsistent, and unstable. Every result influences their next decision. A neutral trader remains focused on the bigger picture. Each trade is just one of many, and no single outcome has the power to change behavior. This perspective protects discipline because it prevents emotional overreactions that lead to rule breaking. The trader remains aligned with their long-term edge rather than being swayed by short-term fluctuations. A neutral emotional state also improves self-awareness. When the mind is calm and balanced, the trader can detect subtle shifts in their internal state. Minor impulses, small hesitations, slight urges to break rules. This awareness allows them to intervene before emotions escalate. They can correct themselves early because neutrality provides the space to observe their own mental activity without being consumed by it. Self-awareness reinforces discipline by acting as an internal monitor that detects emotional interference before it affects execution. Emotional neutrality ensures that trading is approached with the seriousness and professionalism it requires. It removes the chaos, the drama, the emotional swings, and the impulsive behavior. It creates a steady internal foundation from which disciplined action becomes the default response. Without neutrality, discipline is a struggle. With neutrality, discipline is simply the natural expression of a calm and focused mind.